The U.S. Department of War has released a video of a missile launch that's targeted northwest Nigeria operations. U.S. President Donald Trump and the U.S. military say the United States carried out a strike against the Islamic State in northwest Nigeria at the request of Nigeria's government. Now, last night, the U.S. Department of War posted a video on social media showing a missile launch from a military vessel, echoing the statement previously shared by President Donald Trump. All right, for more on this, we're now joined by Thembisa Fakude, Senior Research Fellow at Africa-Asia Dialogues. Thembisa, very good morning to you. Now, we know that this is something that Donald Trump had alluded to in October. As we get your reaction, how significant is the fact that this strike was carried out at Nigeria's request?
Well, it's significant, but at the same time, could be a big mistake, because the narrative that we're getting is that the Nigerian government, which is led by a Muslim president, by the way, went to ask for this or entered into this arrangement with the United States to protect the Christians. Now, the challenge is these bombs are often indiscriminate, and you are likely to have more innocent Muslims in the north of Nigeria being killed as a result. And this could create a problem inside Nigeria. That's the first point. But the other point is, you have Donald Trump, who's a known ultra right-wing thinking president, who also would like to remind the whole world that at some point, some crusades, which is the movement of Christians who went to liberate Christian lands in other parts of the world, and that has never been reconciled between the Christian and Muslims, doing something similar in Nigeria. So the narrative and the political rhetoric that we're going to hear from the United States moving forward, particularly from Donald Trump, is that he's the president that is trying to safeguard and guarantee the protection of Christians, which is going to be a new position that is assuming. And if that proliferates, we are going to have a serious problem, particularly in Nigeria.
Yeah, and the indications so far is that, according to the U.S., that this was a very successful, strike. Trump's language strongly emphasizes just, the protection of Christians. How much of this is strategic messaging for a domestic U.S. audience versus an accurate intelligence assessment about the whole situation?
It is very strategic, and if you've noticed, Benjamin Netanyahu said the same thing when he issued his Christmas message. It's all about suddenly these two despots and people who continue to kill people around the world, including particularly in Palestine, who are saying that they are now going to be protecting the Christians around the world, and certainly this is going to have a softer landing in Christian America and in other parts of the world, because the world now will be seeing, or at least the Christian world, those that are naive, of course, will be seeing these two as the saviors and protectors of Christendom around the world. So it's extremely dangerous times. And in Nigeria, a place that I know very well, particularly in the North, Kano, Maiduguri, Kaduna, and others, the so-called Boko Haram lives within these communities. And if you say you're going to be bombing the installations, you're not going to be bombing them alone. And you are likely, by the way, to kill the majority of the innocent people in that part of the world, which is going to be the case when the dust settles in this instance.
Yeah. And I mean, when we look at it, what does this U.S. strike in Nigeria signal about Washington's evolving counterterrorism posture on the African continent, if you can call it that, in terms of just the dominance? I mean, what are the implications on the continent as a whole?
Well, this has got nothing to do with protection of Christians, by the way. It's got a lot to do with oil. We see Donald Trump doing something similar in Venezuela. Nigeria is also a country that's very rich in oil, but has been mismanaging its oil deposits and exports. And what you're going to likely see happening right now in exchange to this so-called protection is that the Americans are going to take over in terms of managing the exportation of oil from Nigeria. Because the Americans have said very openly that they are going to be drilling, and Trump said, drill, baby, drill. So they're going back into the business of oil, and this is why they're so interested and good appetite in countries that have got oil, not only in Venezuela, but now in Nigeria. So this is Trump's way of entrenching his business interests and that of his country in Nigeria. And what you'll see happening next is you're going to see American companies going to Nigeria and running the business of extracting oil in that country, and in the same time benefiting the United States. But we cannot write off that those moves are going to create internal strife and possible a civil conflict in Nigeria.
Yeah, and I mean, you talked a little bit about those implications in terms of the oil, but on the other hand, what does it mean from a security dependence, perspective? What does that underline? I mean, is it at all strengthening Nigeria's sovereignty, or quite the contrary? In a way, underlying its dependence on America from a security perspective too.
Well, I think one, it undermines the African Union, but number two, it also undermines Nigeria, the most populous country and is supposed to be the most richest nation in Africa. It has been struggling to fight Boko Haram, and by the way, there's no way you can defeat Boko Haram from the aerial warfare or from bombing them from above. You need foot soldiers, you need boots on the ground to deal with Boko Haram, and the situation is as such that it's going to be indiscriminate. As I've said earlier on, you are likely to kill more innocent people. So this was symbolic for Donald Trump. I don't think it will have achieved anything, if you ask me. Most of these guys are moving around freely within communities. So if you want to catch them, you need to have boots on the ground to catch them. But hoping that you're going to be bombing them from above and they will be destroyed, it's a pipe dream. So this is embarrassing, number one, to the Nigerians, because I can tell you now that you're going to have a large toll of innocent people killed, particularly women and children, after this attack. They'll try and suppress it, but it has happened. Number two is, where is the AU? You'll have expected that Nigeria, before going to the United States and allow the United States to do what it has done, it would have consulted at least the African Union would have at least pronounced something that there's that partnership going on. So the AU is a moribund organization as we know it. But sadly, of course, is that Nigeria has also decided to go to an unfamiliar, very unpopular ally called the United States to come and assist itself from the challenges of the Boko Haram, which continues, of course, to terrorize the people of Nigeria.
And Thembisa, as we wrap up our conversation, just along those lines of the AU, when we look at then those regional bodies, including ECOWAS itself, how should or what reaction should we be expecting from ECOWAS and the AU?
Well, nothing. They have not done anything in the past, and I don't think they've got the military wherewithal to assist Nigeria, but at least to expect them to say something. We expect some kind of communication on the eve of this bombing, and we didn't hear nothing from them, notwithstanding, of course, they claim to be on both a regional umbrella body and a continental umbrella body representing African interests, including military interventions, but we don't hear them saying a word. Not long ago, we had this group of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, the Sahel coalition, having their own meetings, and the AU said nothing. So I think African countries are on their own, and they must really, all of us, including South Africa, should stop expecting that anything of significance will come from the African Union. What you'll see happening is going to have these loose alliances taking place, whether with the United States, with the United Arab Emirates, the case in Sudan, China and Russia. They're going to be forming alliances with separate African countries, and that will continue to undermine domestic independence and sovereignty of African countries moving forward.
Well, that's certainly the sentiment on the ground in Nigeria by some. But Thembisa, thank you so much for your insights and unpacking that for us. Thembisa Fakude is a senior researcher there, just unpacking that for us at Africa-Asia Dialogues.